Hello and welcome to Talking F1. We're a podcast from Grand Prix Grandstand that does more or less what that title says. We talk about F1. More specifically, we talk about Formula All. That means Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 and the WSeries. I'm host Jim Kimberley, and today on a little bit of an ad hoc episode, I'm joined by my GP Grandstand partners. I've got Thiemo Albers-Daly and Jacob Phillips. Good to see you, Thiemo and Jacob. Welcome back. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thanks, Jim. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very well. And Jacob?
Yeah, we're doing great, thanks, Jim. Just enjoying the sun. What a great weekend it's been.
Yeah, the weather's been lovely in Old Blighty. I've seen a lot of that, so I'm glad everyone's enjoying it. And hopefully we can enjoy the French Grand Prix coming up. It's not usually the one that everybody gets excited for, but there's a few things that have happened since we were racing at Baku, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, in the weeks following the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, we've heard news for F3, which is racing again after its race at Barcelona. It's come back now for round 2. And unfortunately, friend of the podcast, friend of Grand Prix Grandstand, Pierre-Louis Chovet has been, I don't know if axed is the right word, but he's been dropped from Genza, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth. This kid came out in F3 Asia and bested pretty much every F2 driver that was racing in it, aside from Guan Yu Zhou, and ahead of that final round in F3 Asia was on course to win the championship. And I know it's not necessarily the most prestigious championship in the world, it's one of these winter ones, but the things that it looks like is his sponsor has backed out from sponsoring him, and in the cruelest world of motorsport are now sponsoring his replacement in Genza. And we didn't see a lot of him, Thiemo, in the opening rounds because of the unfortunate qualifying that the team had. But the motorsport world demands a sacrifice, and it looks like Chovet and Petikov in F2 have been it so far. Disappointed to see Chovet leaving?
Yeah, to be honest. Because, I mean, if for nothing else, it was just we only had one round of him. We hadn't really got to see the muster of him just yet. And it seems a bit, I mean, if that's what the sponsor is basing cutting him off for, then it seems a little bit harsh. I mean, I know everywhere money's tight and everything, but at the same time, you've got the money to sponsor a driver. It's not like they've pulled out completely. They've just hopped straight onto his replacement. So it seems a bit harsh from that. And again, it was Barcelona. It was one of the rare times where it was quite exciting in any form of single-seater motor racing. So whilst Chovet couldn't get into the mix of it, you could say the same for about half the grid probably. So it's a shame that they've cut him off there. And again, another one bites the dust essentially. No, it's just a bit of kick in the teeth, as you say. Again, it's just annoying that yet another another financial reason that a driver can't continue.
Yeah, it's the motorsport world is so cost oriented. I saw something with Sebastian Vettel complaining about the cost of stuff as well. And yeah, so Jonathan Hargaard is his replacement, and he has taken essentially a year out of racing. So it's great for him to come back, but it's at the cost of another talent which might not ever make it back. But I'm sure Pierre is going to be.
Wasn't he in F3 last year briefly, or?
Just having a quick look, he was in Formula Renault Euro Cup for one round at Imola, Mr. Hoggard. So, yeah, it's a weird year last year, of course. There's all sorts of reasons people could race and couldn't, and WSeries, of course, are racing this year, weren't racing last year. So, I get frustrated because I want to see the best drivers racing, and Chovet looked like he could have had a really good year this year after that F3 Asia stuff, but that's not going to be the case. But F3 returning, Jacob, we're going to be at France, and Formula One historically not that exciting at Paul Ricard. Do you think F3 could be any better?
I think, yeah, well, definitely, certainly. It's almost a case that even better tracks than Paul Ricard, that the junior series provide better racing than Formula One itself. I'm expecting once again a very close weekend. All the contenders are going to be, very close. I think we might see hopefully a better weekend this weekend for Arthur Leclerc. Obviously, it wasn't very great for him last time out in Spain, but I think we'll see him come to the top of the timesheets. And like we've seen with F2 this year, we really can't put a name on it, because I can't certainly predict a winner from the whole 3 races. But I certainly think, as we just discussed, Victor Martins will be up there. Victor Martins will be up there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. We saw Victor Martins, and he's got a good starting. He's got a good starting point after getting 3-point scoring finishes in his debut race. That it could continue. Hauger, of course, and Prema looking quite strong. I did watch the Formula Regional at Paul Ricard actually, and Prema were nowhere, which was quite interesting because you'd expect them to do so quite well, but really struggling for pace. So they'll be hopeful they can improve on that this time round with the Formula 3 racing.
I'll make the bold prediction there briefly, just slick it in there. The fun prediction for F3 this weekend being that, given the nature of the track and its confusing layout, maybe we'll get some interesting action that way, because some of the drivers just won't remember the way around.
It's an absolute maze, isn't it? It is an absolute maze. We mentioned WSeries briefly, that they also will be racing soon, but not this week. But there is WSeries action, which is extremely exciting. Of course, we mentioned that we do Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 and the WSeries, and WSeries haven't been racing thus far. They're racing in a couple of weeks for I think it's the Styrian Grand Prix first, but they're racing Austria twice, but Styria first. Thanks for the nod, Jacob, to confirm. But this week they are going to be in action of sorts, as they've announced that they've got a documentary, which is I've likened to Driven to Survive rather than Drive to Survive, because it's called Driven, and a 6-part documentary that's on, is it All 4OD, whatever it's called these days. Thank you very much, All 4, and it's going to be available internationally. Thiemo, we got quite a stop-starty coverage of WSeries when it when it came out. There was a lot of explanation going on. I know that they were trying to figure out who their audience was. This documentary series, as we've seen from Chasing the Dream for F2, for Drive to Survive for F1, are we hopeful that it could be some of the same?
Yeah, I mean, even if it's on the same kind of wavelength, then it should do WSeries good few wonders there. I mean, Drive to Survive, love it or hate it, you can't argue that it's gotten F1 out to more people that would not have paid it too much attention before. So hopefully this does the same to this, because I mean, I've been catching up on some of the WSeries races from the first season, and I mean, the racing is perfectly good. There's no reason not to watch it if you like a good bit of racing. So if this can get the message out there a bit more and show us a bit more behind the scenes, maybe we'll finally find out what happened in Anglesey, and I'm all for it,
All for it. Very, very clever. I see what you did there.
I even wish that was planned, but that was
Jacob, as well, we've seen the benefits Drive to Survive has had for Formula 1 with increased viewer numbers. Do you think we could have something of the same? Some people watching, I know it's not live on Channel 4, but everyone streams anyway these days. Some of the same for WSeries with this Driven documentary?
Oh, yeah, for sure. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see regularly that I said Drive to Survive was probably the best thing that ever happened to F1. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan due to, its cinematic nature and, a couple of twisting of the truth here and there with the odd radio message that should be in there. But certainly it's got, F1 out to a whole new audience. And it will certainly do the same for the W-Series. There's not a lot of coverage around, and certainly speaking to other people within the motorsport community, like you say, it was very stop-starting. It was kind of very hard to get into the action, especially when there's whole, F2 and F3. It kind of gets, forgotten about. But, certainly it will bring those drivers to life as well, not just the racing, which I've seen some of the races and gone back and watched the highlights. And yeah, the racing, as Thiemo said, is actually very, very much up there. But it will give that human element to these female drivers in a motorsport environment where you don't often hear the female side of things. It's very much been for years now a male-dominated sport. So it's certainly going to be in the living rooms, and it's on 4OD or 4 on demand now, whatever it's called. So it's going to be in the it's on terrestrial TV, so it's going to be free to air. And yeah, it's certainly going to inspire the young generation, certainly female drivers as well.
Yeah, I've argued this, and hopefully if you're listening to this podcast or watching us now, that you're open to W Series, and if you haven't watched it before, really recommend it. All the races are on YouTube. If you don't know who's won the championship and want to watch it, you can get them all done in an afternoon of viewing. The races are all there. It's only 6 rounds. But if you do know who's won and you want to just see some of the action, have a look at the Assen reverse grid races. So really one of the best F3 races you could imagine, and extremely clean action all the way through, and it really highlighted the talent of these drivers. And from my side with W Series, I don't want to be disparaging to the drivers in there because I think they're all great, but I think realistically we're not going to see one of these drivers currently in F1. I just don't know if that's the case, and that's just based off of how some of the drivers have performed in F3 and F2 previously. But the idea for W Series, and I think it's possibly the most important motorsport series out there right now, is that it's going to open up the world to the idea of both genders equally racing. So a driver who is young now, maybe not even a driver, but a kid who's young now who might have otherwise considered racing could race because they're seeing these drivers racing that you wouldn't expect to see racing necessarily, and challenging the norm. And I think it's hugely important. Great entertainment, great racing. And if one of the drivers do get into Formula One right now, that'd be ace. Jamie Chadwick, of course, is tied to the Williams team. And if Latifi and Russell are to leave next year, then I'd love to see Jamie Chadwick take that drive. I just don't know if that's a realistic possibility. But who knows? The greatest thing would be having a female Formula One driver who is not there for PR purposes, as we saw with Lotus.
I think a great thing to see would be, depending on how effective the regulations are as well next year, if there is an incentive either for a new team to come in, or if, like you say, if Russell and Latifi part ways with Williams, if you're a new team or a team that's already there but is slightly down the back end of the grid, you don't have as much to lose. You never know. You could see, if there's a bold Eddie Jordan style prediction for you, have 2 female drivers in Williams next year, just completely set everything upside down.
That's as Eddie Jordan as you get. But the reason I say with the Chadwick thing, just briefly, is that we saw Chadwick. She didn't dominate, but she certainly had a very good, strong start in W Series in 2019. And yeah, spoilers if you haven't watched it, just close your ears for a second. When she went on to clinch that title, she looked like the strongest. But then when she was racing in Formula Regional the following year and in Prima, she wasn't defeating the other drivers. She got 9th place. I just had a quick check there. She got 9th place in it. So that's where I feel like there's that disconnect in terms of what W Series talent is compared to what the talent is on the whole motorsport world. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but inequality at a grassroots level is certainly going to be part of that. So I'm very, very hopeful that we will see more and more opportunities as costs go down and there's potential for a lot more people to have opportunity to race. We could see female drivers in F1 soon enough.
I think it's another great reason why you've got Jamie Chadwick kind of not doing as you might have expected there from a regional, why it's such a good thing this season for the racing. You've had a bit of time out and you've got some new drivers coming in. There's no guarantee that she can repeat it, so it should make for closer racing, which is what we all want. Yeah,
closer racing is the aim of everything. And just want to quickly touch that they have some news out W Series that we've got 5 reserve drivers, and they are Tasmin Pepper, Abby Pulling, Gossier Odest, Naomi Schiff, Caitlin Wood. 4 of those drivers will be familiar names to anybody who watched it, and Tasmin Pepper should have been able to drive this season after finishing the top 12 in 2019, which was the prerequisite to get an automatic slot in the subsequent season, which, as it turned out, was 2021. However, because of COVID restrictions, Tasmin is unable to race, but she's hopeful that she can race. But to start with, we're going to have Gossier Odest doing both the rounds in Austria, and potentially seeing Caitlin Wood jump in. Abby Pulling is in British F4 and is mentored by Alice Powell. And Naomi Schiff is actually doing some of the racing, she's doing some of the coverage with W Series, and she looks like she's such a natural on camera. So really excited to see how she's going to be in that presenter role. But if she can get in the car as well at some point, that would be great. But yeah, it's Tasmin Pepper's drive, which she will not be driving in, depending on how COVID restrictions go. And briefly want to touch on a bit of other news as we talk F1, and F1 is racing as well. But Jacob, Sky Italy are reporting rumours that Bottas is going to be replaced for next year by George Russell, with an announcement coming up at Silverstone. Your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, how many times, Jim, in the last sort of even 3 or 4 months have we seen this rumour? Do we believe Sky Sleep? Well, I mean, there's obviously certainly a possibility that it will be announced. Do I think that Russell should take the seat? I think I've always said this. Bottas is a great second driver. You know, he's always brought the points to the team. He's never going to upset Hamilton, for example, and he certainly doesn't sort of upset the team balance there. But I think it's time that Mercedes really much move on now and put Russell up there. You know, it's certainly going to re-energize the team and sort of refresh the sport as well. And yeah, I certainly think it's a possibility. Whether it will happen at Silverstone at all, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised even once we get to the summer break that announcement is made.
Would be a great place for it to happen if it was Silverstone, though. Even if they only let in a few fans, everyone's already a big fan of him in Britain as it is. But to do it at home, it wouldn't be great for Bottas and to crush him and leave a bit more. But for Russell, you got to think would be perfect timing for him. He said he wanted to get it done before the summer break as well.
It's the tabloid element, isn't it? That's a little bit frustrating. That it's like here's a rumor, and it's such an easy rumor to pick up on. But it's that belief element, Thiemo. Like Jacob says, do we believe this is a real one now, or is this just another?
I think it's one of those predictions, like last year saying Hamilton's going to win, but you don't know it yet. It's probably going to happen, but it's just a matter of when, not if. So I'll be also, I think I've said it before, but I'll be surprised if Bottas is in the Mercedes next year. So it's kind of, again, it's an easy rumor to say, but if you say it enough times, it'll eventually happen.
Boy who cried wolf, I saw you say there, Jacob. Do you think is another boy who cried wolf?
No pun intended.
Double F, exactly. Yeah. Your thoughts with it? The realism or the realistic possibility of this happening with the regulation changer, that to me is what maybe means, and I'm a big Bottas fan, but the guy's been there, 5 years, and number 2 driver, the epitome, is a Rubens entirely. And I don't think he wants to be. I don't think it's like, I don't know if Rubens necessarily wanted to be, but that's just how things were, and you recognise it before. I think Bottas has got no, this could be my year, this could be my year. The neutral in me would love to see Russell in that seat, and Jacob, Mercedes need to have some sort of proof to say our junior driver program is worthwhile, because they've had one driver race a Mercedes once, and that's because of COVID and Hamilton getting COVID. They need to be having a Mercedes junior driver having an entire season, surely.
Well, I mean, talking back to Barrichello had 5 seasons with Ferrari, and then they called it quits there. So certainly, yeah, they do need to justify their program, and I think Russell, this is Russell's 3rd year now in Williams. He's not picked up a point yet. And there's been a couple of mistakes in there, but certainly his qualifying performances and the way he's absolutely lambasted Latifi there shows that he's very much capable. And Sakir proves that. He was literally, milliseconds off pole and would have picked up a win, was it not for the puncture and the pit stop mess up. So I do think they proved it. And yes, they do need to put him in there to justify that program. What's another year for Williams going to do for Russell, and what's another year going to do for Bottas at Mercedes? He's not going to win the championship. Of course, he doesn't want to be the number 2. No one wants to be the number 2. But the reason he's the number 2 is he's just not good enough.
There's another bold prediction for next year that probably won't happen, but if it does, you heard it here first. Russell and Bottas, they just swap round.
Oof, that would be quite the demotion, Bottas back to where he came from. But if I was Bottas, I'd be saying, when I left this team, it was in a good state, and look what you guys have done to it. It's Williams have shadowed their former self. So yeah, anything could happen. It's there's all sorts of bold predictions we've got from Thiemo. Somehow Williams is going to be having Bottas in there with an all-female lineup. So I'm very, very interested to see how that's.
He'll be there. He'll be the reserve driver, and he'll be like, "How did this happen?"
Well, it's a quick whistle stop time with Talking F1 this time round. But guys, we'll be speaking all about the French Grand Prix, and hopefully it can give us a cracker at last. Fingers crossed. Double fingers crossed from you, Jacob. Thiemo, where can people find your work until then?
You can find me over on GP Grandstand, where I've just be having later this week, depending when this comes out, the preview of what to watch out for in France for F1. Away from there, you can find me on Drive Tribe. You can find me on YouTube by searching the name that is around my face somewhere, and on Instagram at t.albers.daily.drivetribe.
And Jacob.
Yep, you can find all my work at, of course, GP Grandstand, and you can find me on Twitter at JacobPhil18.
Perfect. Those will be in the show notes. So if you're watching on YouTube, just have a click below. And for me, you can find my writing on gpgrandstand.com and fortlock.com. My satire news, search the F1 week that was on YouTube, and of course on gpgrandstand.com and GP Grandstand TV and the Talking F1 podcast. Thank you for listening to us talking F1 very briefly this time. Keep your ears peeled. After the French Grand Prix, we'll be talking F1 all over again.